Welcome, all you poor souls in search for a cappuccino, to Geek Salad's retro movie reviews from Geek Salad Podcast. I'm Andy.
And I'm Mike.
And we are continuing our month of summer box office failures. But again, can't do this alone, especially for possibly the biggest bomb of 1991. So we brought in our good friend from the Movies After Work podcast, Tom.
Hey there, guys.
Welcome back.
Good to be back. I sadly did not have a cappuccino cup in my house to use, so I just had to pick something else to use.
Nice.
Oh.
Sir, I appreciate the pander. Thank you.
I gotta butter you guys up before I have to start defending this movie.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So, right before Mike hit the record button, I feel like we're going to be in the same position that we were in for Last Action Hero, where, Tom, I know you love this movie.
Yes.
This is a movie I actually have a weird soft spot for.
Very weird soft
spot. Could not stand this movie. Just I could hear, Mike, I could feel the heat of your breath in these texts that you sent, like in the last hour.
Watched it for the very first time. I watched like 7 minutes of it this morning, and I finished up the rest of it about maybe 15 minutes ago. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to get that time back.
So, all right. So Mike's first time was just a few minutes ago. Tom, how about you? When's the first time you saw Hudson Hawk? Which, by the way, is the movie we were talking about. You probably already saw that when you clicked on there. We were talking about 1991's Hudson Hawk.
I saw this movie when I was a kid. It was one of the movies that my dad had on VHS that he just kind of was like, yeah, screw it. You've watched Terminator 2. This you might as well just watch movies as long as they're not really bad.
No, Kurt. Actually, I will say this is not Caddyshack 2 levels of bad. Rest in peace, Jackie Mason. It's a weird. All right, so
it's not that level of bad, but it's not good. It's really not good.
All right, so I will preface this by saying I like certain aspects of this movie. It is a weird level of bad. I saw this opening weekend, by the way.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. Yep. I honestly thought it was going to look fun. It's from the director of Heathers, and at that time, everyone in my age group lived and died by Heathers.
And Die Hard 2 had only come out the year before, so yeah.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis can do no wrong.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a theory out here. I don't have anything to really back it up. Tom, I don't know if you've heard anything to the contrary. I know Mike hasn't done too much internal research on this, but I feel like the stuff that works, the jokes that work, the lines that work are purely Daniel Waters' screenplay. And a lot of the stuff in this movie that doesn't work is Bruce Willis doing what Bruce Willis did at this point and continued to do for decades later, is bully the director. If the director doesn't have a lot of clout, he will bully them into, I want to do this. I think this is a great idea. We should do this. Now I got to get a screenwriting credit.
Well, to my recollection, this was the concept was Bruce Willis's idea.
The story
that he wanted. Yeah, he wanted to do
Willis, Robert Kraft.
Yeah, he wanted to do this. Having Danny Aiello be his partner in crime was like a bucket list thing for him, and so he was the one who got him to do the movie.
Okay.
As I've gotten older, I will attest that this movie is definitely Bruce Willis saying, "Hey, I want to make an entire movie to sell me as a musician."
Yeah, was this right about the time that Bruno came out?
No, this is 5 years after Bruno was released.
And he didn't learn his lesson there?
No. Oh, this is also a post. Look who's talking. You. Yep. Jaws came out a year before.
I was talking to someone at work about this actually yesterday, and because we were talking about Bruce Willis's career as it is now, and Bruce Willis kind of has this unfortunate career of everyone kind of wanting him to fail, and kind of preferring it when he fails.
Yeah.
All because he made one, in my opinion, more mediocre than bad comedy with Blind Date.
And to
And
be
so
fair,
then, like, for the rest of his career, it's been, if you're the lead, we're kind of hoping that you fail.
I mean, to be fair though, from everything I've heard, Bruce Willis does himself no favors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He burns a lot of bridges with his own personality.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that comes across, and this is why it's almost like a revelation when something really works. Die Hard, I almost feel like Die Hard works in spite of Bruce Willis, even though he gives a very strong performance. I feel the failings in Hudson Hawk are just generally, it's Bruce Willis, number one. There's a lot of ego on this screen. There's a lot of there's a lot of like, oh God, can you just be less insufferable for 5 seconds? And then Andie MacDowell was a close second because I've never gotten her appeal.
Well, as my dad said the first time I watched the movie, and he walked into the room and saw her trying to deliver a line, he just, for years, he's always said, if you pay for Andie MacDowell, you're going to get Andie MacDowell. You only have yourself to blame at that point.
I've seen Andie MacDowell. Well, I've liked Andie MacDowell in one movie.
Which was? Oh, yes, Groundhog Day. And again,
That's fair.
Great, almost in spite of her.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
She has like 2-3 scenes in Groundhog's Day that really rely on her being a part of the scene. You know, the establishing stuff, the finding out, you know, like the fighting with him, making up with him. Beyond that, you know, it's just having her stand there and go, you know how to play piano? You know how to... She really just has to be bewildered, which she generally seems.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
it worked to her faults.
Most of what I've been exposed to with Andie MacDowell has been Forwarding to a Funeral, which she is absolutely atrocious in, and Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, which her Texas accent was so thick they had Glenn Close overdub her.
I mean, I don't think there's any actress in the history of cinema that could have taken that script and made that character work, though.
Yeah. In terms of which movie we talking? We talking about Hudson Hawk?
Pick and choose here.
Greystone.
Oh, Greystone. Okay.
I mean, I'm willing to go with Hudson Hawk as well.
No, you could have some legitimately good work from some, like, if you recasted that movie with like Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Mm-hmm. Meryl Streep.
I mean, that's
yeah, if you had like Julia Louis-Dreyfus playing the role in Hudson Hawk, it would have been a highlight of the movie for sure.
Yeah.
And Andie MacDowell is basically just sun-dried Julia Louis-Dreyfus in every possible way.
Honestly, just thinking about casting of actresses of that era, I could have seen Gina Davis do a really good job in this.
Yeah. It's the kind of role you would normally cast her in at that time, yeah.
Right, but she does have the ability. She can more than capacitate a comedic movie.
Yeah.
To be fair, I mean, I honestly, Andie MacDowell is not great, but she's not given a whole lot to work with in this one. Come on. She's taken down by a dog.
Yeah, she's
literally taken down by a dog after,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, we're going to, yes. And really? Really?
I mean, this movie is Bruce Willis as Bugs Bunny in a live-action R-rated Looney Tune movie. That's what this movie is. And through that viewpoint, this movie, like all the ridiculousness of this movie works to me through that lens.
Yeah. I actually heard a really good comparison today, actually, about it. That essentially, if you look at the Coen Brothers comedies and you take the dude from The Big Lebowski and put him in the action sequences of Raising Arizona, that's essentially the aesthetic that Hudson Hawk comes up with.
Yep.
And Mike's like, I don't think I've seen either of those movies.
No, I haven't.
Okay. The thing with this movie, and what sells me on this movie so much, though, it's the villains. Richard E. Grant, and Mike was like, "What is Richard E. Grant doing in this movie?" And I'm like,
"No. My exact
part of this movie.
My exact word was, "What the fuck is Richard E. Grant doing in this movie?"
And my response was being the best fucking part of this movie. He
is awesome.
And Sandra Bernhard are, and I'm not even a big fan of hers. I don't think, even in this movie, she can't. Oh, stop it! She can't act that well.
No, she can't.
Oh my god, she can play an over.
I don't feel like she's acting.
Villainous bitch, and it works. It works. Their chemistry, what they bring to this movie, is why I am like, this movie's not that bad, guys. Look at the villains.
Oh,
yeah, I did look at the villains.
Oh, stop it! Stop it!
As a kid, of course, it's a movie with a bunch of cartooniness and zaniness. That when you're like a 12-year-old boy, almost everything in this movie is hysterical. The way we get rid of Bunny, as a kid, that was just like the greatest moment that ever happened in a movie.
I mean, they ripped that off of Superman 3.
Well,
Bunny looked a lot like the woman that got mechanicized or whatever.
Oh god, that nightmare-inducing scene.
Oh yeah. But hey, even if it did that, how many movies have stolen the let's play old security footage thing that this movie did? That has become a standard that everyone has taken from this movie. He is determined to disprove me.
Damn, no. Secrets took place next year.
Damn. Okay.
Because that movie I love.
I mean,
that's a great movie. It was a fantastic movie.
Even the supporting villains in this, as goofy and cartoonish as the Candy Bar Gang are.
The Mayflower? No, yes. For half the movie, I thought that the Mayflowers were the Candy Bar Gang. They introduced so many just characters that just everything. The movie tried to be a much bigger, more epic movie than it really had any right to be, and we didn't need those CIAs.
I don't dispute that. I feel like having the foot soldiers there, though, recurring foot soldiers, helps move a lot of the plot along, because I don't trust the Mayflowers to get into heavy-duty action sequences the way that there was a requirement needed.
No, that's why they had their butler.
Oh, the butler.
I love the
Until
butler.
I rewatched it, I totally forgot about the butler.
Oh yeah, and as Blades, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have to dispute what you're saying, just because as a kid watching this movie, I did not have any difficulty understanding, okay, these are the Mayflowers, and they've teamed up with evil CIA guy that, it would take me a few more years to understand why it was a big deal that he was in the movie, and his team, and why it was so sad that David Carradine was on his team, and it would have to be a few more years before I understood that.
Oh, David Caruso,
David Caruso, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got all of it because this movie, I feel like this movie so compartmentalizes each scene almost like individual skits, to the point where like the whole bit where they're paralyzed in that in her apartment, and they're refusing to participate in the conversation the CIA people are trying to have, beyond the fact that that's what the Suicide Squad should have been, not to drag that back into all this. But to this day, I still sometimes will look at a newspaper and just want to go, God damn it, Yanks lost again. How'd the Mets do? Can you turn to page 7? I still just instinctively want it. Always makes me laugh because their chemistry when they were doing the comedic shtick to me was always just great.
Yeah.
But you get, little things like that, but they're so compartmentalized, not to the point of feeling like separate movies necessarily, but I never felt like I got lost in the plot.
Yeah. I kind of feel like there were, like, Danny Aiello, who I think at this point was the most prestigious actor they had for this at that point. Due to
what about James Coburn?
James Coburn, I think he'd been out of the spotlight for a little while, but I could be wrong.
He'd been out of the spotlight for a very long time. He had just, for me, had just been like one of those old timey movie actors. He was a tough guy. We weren't reintroduced to the Flint movies yet because Austin Powers hadn't come out yet. But Danny Aiello is coming off of an Oscar nomination for Do the Right Thing, and his inclusion in this movie kind of infuriates me because there are moments when his delivery is spot on, and I'm talking specifically about 2 scenes. The first one is the thing where Hudson's talking about getting a cappuccino. He's like, "Do you still drink those, unmasculine Italian coffees?" And just the way he says it's great.
Oh, yeah.
And then, in that same scene, Tom, that you were referring to, when they find out that Andy McDowell is a nun, and he starts laughing, and Bruce Willis goes, "Those better be tears." They are.
They are.
I will say, for the most part, Danny Aiello is pretty much one of the only things in this movie I did like.
Yeah, except the end, when they explain how he survived. That is what I'm talking about in terms of being just like, why? Why are you turning him into low-rent Joe Pesci at this point? Fucking airbags! Can you believe it?
And even Bruce Willis is like, sure, yeah, okay. We'll go with that. Right. It's like,
well, you know what, though? I appreciated that. I appreciate the fact that it's such a ridiculous situation that it's just like, okay, great. Fine. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
They're coming close. They're coming close to an hour and 40 minutes. They got to wrap the movie up.
I was fine with him sacrificing himself.
Well, he's got to tell him to drink his coffee.
But we're also coming off of the heels of the bro, all the bro movies of the 80s, where if you are the lead characters, you have this strange immortality to you. So to even have Bruce Willis, who was a major part of that era, be going, be making a movie where something that ridiculous is happening, and he's just going, yeah, sure, fuck it, whatever, yeah, that's sure, why not? Why isn't that believable?
Ridiculous, like him sliding down a zip line. The guy is like right behind him, pointing the gun at him.
Yeah.
He shoots and he hits the wire instead of him. Nobody's able to shoot straight in this movie.
No,
they
can't.
And we all love Star Wars, and we know how bad the stormtroopers aim.
Well, that's because the helmet's thick.
But that's the thing, though, is you can take a lot of the how are they surviving this moments of this movie, or how are we doing this ridiculous thing, and someone could sit there and within 5 minutes pull up, something from Lethal Weapon, something from a Die Hard movie, something from anything. Yes, they did, Kurt. And they could show you something equally ridiculous from a movie that takes itself far more seriously. I mean, we're at the point now where we've got, F9 in theaters right now, hoping that nobody knows how magnets work.
Well,
or
He asked the question, how the fuck do they work? It's a miracle.
Family.
Yes.
Family.
That's also how you get a car into outer space, is by family.
Family.
Also, and you survive being in space by joining Vin Diesel and bad-mouthing Dwayne Johnson.
Oh my god! I know this episode is not about the Fast and Furious movies, and I've said this 1,000 times before, but if you're all about the Fast movies and you bitch about Marvel in my film Twitter, go fuck yourself.
Well, if you bitch about any movie, I won't even I'm not a fan of Transformers, but I won't take any Transformers slander from people who are fans of the Fast and Furious franchise. You have chosen to take what started as a lazy ripoff of Point Break that has turned itself into the only superhero franchise that Vin Diesel can convince anyone to let him be the lead of.
Dude, stick to Groot. Stick to Groot.
Yep. It's crazy. But, I mean, with this movie, it's totally understand. I mean, I don't assume Mike would remember if this movie's rollout. Tom, I know you wouldn't remember this movie's rollout. This was one of these movies that when Entertainment Weekly would put out their summer movie preview, this was in their top 10 most anticipated movies. Mainly because large budget, Bruce Willis, and it just the trailers were a little confusing. I mean, I went because it just looked like it was going to be a fun time.
Well,
that's exactly what I got out of it. I don't remember, with Last Action Hero, it took that 30 years later rewatch for me to be like, okay, I get it. I get what they're getting at now. It just, with this one, is always going to be you want to watch this because there are worse movies that came out in this year alone, which we're speaking about tomorrow, Mike.
There are worse movies coming out this year alone that Bruce Willis was the star of. He had 4 movies this year. Every single one of them was a flop.
Remind me, what were the other ones for 91?
Hold on.
You got them all, don't you?
I had them. Yeah.
Was Bonfire 91?
Nope.
Oh my god, it was. Holy shit.
No, that was 90. Bonfire of Vanities was 90. 1991, Mortal Thoughts, Hudson Hawk, Billy Bathgate, and The Last Boy Scout.
Oh god, The Last Boy Scout.
Every single one of them lost money.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I totally forgot about The Last Boy Scout. Because, as by rights, you should forget about The Last Boy Scout.
I'm pretty sure Shane Black generally asks people when he meets them if they've forgotten about it.
Yeah. I think that was the first time, and this was when I was really getting into screenwriting. I had heard about this insane paycheck that Shane Black got for The Last Boy Scout, just based on a story outline, and he got $3 million. I think it was the most expensive script purchased at that point.
Yeah. It was a big deal.
Yeah, but with this movie, I mean, there's a lot of little. I like where Daniel Waters, who by the way wrote the best Batman movie ever, Batman Returns.
Best live action.
Yes. Okay, sorry. I forgot I had to qualify that. There were some gags in this movie that are stupid on the surface, but kind of work. working the lesser Stallone and giving him a brother in the movie and calling them the Mario Brothers. It's like there are three little pieces of this dumb joke that work. Yep. Instructions even your brother could know. And for us in the know, we're like, that's the far from over, dude. We're like, oh, God, that's shitting on Sly.
Yeah, and I'm guessing Frank Stallone had to sleep on the couch for a good long while after that one.
I'm pretty sure his mother didn't speak to him for the rest of her life. Why can't you be more like Sly? Yeah, there's just goofy shit in this movie. And I will say that this is the movie that turned me on to cappuccinos. I'd heard about them, mainly because this was like, late 80s, early 90s. There was still LA Law in the air, and they drank them all the time. I'm like, went to a restaurant. I'm like, I'm going to order a cappuccino. Never had one before. I've been a coffee drinker since I was 10 years old. But
it
was like I don't think I'd ever actually had an espresso coffee. Mario and Luigi Mario.
Yeah, we will not be watching that movie anytime soon.
That's just poor screenwriting, PT. You wrote a bad screenplay. Thank you for getting the reference. Yeah, and I had a cappuccino. I was like, you know what? This actually isn't bad. I don't get them all the time, but if my wife and I are out for dinner, and it's like, I kind of want a coffee, I'm going to get a cappuccino. And lately, I find when I do that, it's like, let me go check to see if the machine is working.
But why are you drinking a cappuccino at dinner time? You're going to be up all night.
Oh, no, after dinner. With dessert, Mike. We get dessert.
That's still a lot of caffeine.
And you obviously know me well enough to know that. You know, the funny thing is, though, and I'm thinking about this, Mike and I, you and I have never done like a road trip together.
No.
So you have, honestly, next to no idea how much coffee I can drink in a day.
Yeah. Whereas I drank about a pot and a half of tea last Saturday, and I was buzzing for a couple hours after that. That was way more tea than I ever drank.
If I don't get caffeine in my system before 10 o'clock, I'm cranky for the rest of the day. So it's
yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. So, but yes, no, that is my takeaway from this movie is that it got me hooked on cappuccinos. Yeah. And Richard E. Grant and Sandra Bernhard are amazing villains.
Yes. Well, and this was part of that early 90s, like kind of last grasp of the rebirth of the macho trend that kind of came back in the 80s, because you had things like News Radio with Dave Foley, Phil Hartman, and Andy Dick, where Andy Dick was the weird one because he did things like ate organic food and did stuff like that. You know, he did all this stuff that today it's all incredibly normal. You know, and Phil Hartman was the macho guy who refused to stop smoking even when the ordinance came through that he had to stop. And all sorts of stuff like that. And this cappuccino thing is just kind of an extension of that, of just that sort of let's cling on to this machoism that died out eventually.
Can we also say that more villains in this movie got killed by the editing than by Bruce Willis? How many villains in this movie got edited to death? I think a good chunk of them, including both the Mayflowers. Something happens. No, now they're dead. Something happens. Now they're dead.
It was confusing. Like the first 2 or 3 times I watched this movie, it is kind of confusing what kind of happens to him. It does take repeat viewings for like, oh, okay, the lead burned her to death, and he was electrocuted, I believe.
He's electrocuted.
Yeah, by some cable that appears out of nowhere.
They gotta get rid of the cables somehow.
The cables for all the lighting and stuff around the machine all fall on him.
Yeah.
And he gets electrocuted.
I do want to point out,
if that helps you sleep at night, go ahead.
This movie came out, I think, a decade before the Da Vinci Code came out.
Yeah.
And it really hammers in that, Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just a great artist. He was a scientist and an inventor. And all of these little cryptics and stuff that would eventually make Dan Brown tons of money in his poorly written books. But
yes.
Well, that would also help out most of Assassin's Creed 2, which is a fantastic game.
2. I don't know if I played 2. Me and stealth missions.
Yep.
Yeah, and escort missions. Nope.
Yep.
No, thank you.
Oh.
No, thank you.
I want to meet the person who likes escort missions and tell them how wrong they are.
Yeah, and you can escort them while there'd be the stupidest person just wander off to do whatever and probably die.
We're gonna have an intervention about this. And
you like stealth missions? Here's a sloth. Get across the LA freeway. Have fun.
Why does this thing smell like piss? Because they're so lazy that when they hang upside down, they just piss on themselves. It's a thing they do. So,
but yes, I will attest. Not every comment from Bruce Willis is necessary in this movie.
No,
him hanging by a gurney is funny, and a fun bit. Him doing the whole "How am I driving?" line.
Yeah.
That's not great, but yeah. I will forever defend him looking at Butterfinger. I think is the big guy.
Yes, Andrew
yeah,
who was Chip Shrek. Also in Batman Returns.
But yeah, when he looks at him, he's got your stamps. Good, Yogi. I still love that. I defend it. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. But you're right, though. There are a lot of just like, it's Bruce Willis trying to be funny and charming.
Yes.
And it's hard to tell at that point where the line is between what he thought was going to be hilarious and what was actually written in the script for him to say.
Yes.
Because he's so charming. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Mike, go.
He's so charming he can even seduce a nun.
I will take Bruce Willis can seduce a nun over Ben Affleck can turn a lesbian straight.
Well, I think good writing did that.
So,
but
anyway,
yeah, and I will, and also the whole "I'll kill the bitch you went to prom with" Betty Jo Barski. I can get you a home address if you want.
I love that.
I like that one. That was like one of the only jokes by him I liked.
That's one of the best comebacks that any Bruce Willis character has ever given.
Right. You're absolutely right about it. I love that line. But hey, he gets his coffee in the end, and that's all that matters. Even though, for such an aficionado for such fine things, ketchup on pasta.
Oh yeah, let's have the Italian guards with a thermos full of spaghetti.
Oh yeah, because that's what Italians do. No one is calling this movie a masterpiece. Sometimes you just need to. I think this is the kind of movie that if you're trying to tell people about it, some of the inherent charm of these movies that are just infamous failures is just sometimes you have to have a cheap hamburger sometimes. It can't be steak all the time. You need to have these things. You have to embrace the stupid. Because like Mike had brought up about the guard, like not being able to shoot him, get him dead to rights. Mm-hmm. You just got to roll with it. Story don't work without it,
Yep. Well, and it's like Jim Gaffigan says, everyone has their McDonald's. Like it's what it is, and this should be a dark comedy in the fact that we're just killing characters off left and right. To the point where at one point, just for almost no good reason, we decided to kill off the Proclaimers just with 2 headshots.
Yep.
To just end them.
Eep-a-doop.
Yep. Named only based off of the voice sounds they make when they die.
When they die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, but it's that whole, like, the 90s were a rough time to try to make dark comedies. Like,
it was.
Because it was like a month ago I finally watched one called Drowning Mona, which is Bette Midler, Danny DeVito, Nev Campbell, William Fincher, Will Ferrell, somebody else whose name I'm spacing on. But there's a bunch of people in it. Good cast, good concept, fails miserably.
Yep.
But it was just kind of the way it was in the 90s. For whatever reason, in the 90s, dark comedies were just a hard formula to crack.
Actually, the next year, he was in a dark comedy that did work.
You
name it.
Death Becomes Her.
You got it.
Oh, that's right. Well, yes, you had Death Becomes Her, you had War of the Roses, you did have some.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
it wasn't impossible to crack. It was just very hard to crack.
Yeah.
Right. And especially because if you're trying to find something that works, especially we're just coming out of the rocks out with your cocks out action genres, that it was really tough to try to sell. Dark comedy isn't something you can just sit and watch passively. You have to pay attention to it.
Yes.
And it's not, it's not the kind of comedy where you get kicked in the balls, even though Bruce Willis, that dog bit Bruce Willis's balls, 5 times in this movie? And to one point, he's like, just give it another minute.
It's so close.
But yeah, you're right about that. It was a tough time for dark comedies, and this movie would have been a tough sell. It's a tough sell now. If you found newer actors of, I don't want to use this ilk, but you can find the modern day stand-ins for Bruce Willis, Andy McDowell, Danny Aiello, Richard E. Grant, and Sandra Bernhardt. You're still gonna have a hard time selling this movie.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing where Coburn was like punching him, and he was just dunk, 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 bang, 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 bang. It's like, really? Now you're just going into cartoonish levels of no, just
again, Looney Tunes.
Yeah, but a lot of that exactly. This is they tried to do live action Looney Tunes.
And
there's been one movie, speaking of dark comedies, that did live action Looney Tunes better than anything else. It's a Coen Brothers movie, because we've talked about a few. Actually, no, it's not Coen. It's Sam Raimi. It is Sam Raimi. Crime Wave.
Oh yes.
You ever seen Crime Wave?
I've never heard of Crime Wave.
Oh boy, it is a live action cartoon. Like everything that happens to everybody would happen in a cartoon. I don't know how well I haven't watched the movie in 30 years. I don't know how well it's aged, but it's definitely worth a showing if you can find it.
I'll just watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Well, that's still got animated characters.
Yeah, but it's still good.
Yeah, exactly. Because nothing has been able to surpass it in 30 plus years. Because Space Jam is not good.
I mean, cool. What was it? What was it?
Cool World.
Cool World. Yeah.
World? Oh,
see, that came close, right? Right,
oh,
real close.
God.
Yeah, no.
To what? An eraser?
I would say it did have a good soundtrack. Cool World did have a really good soundtrack, but that was it.
Yeah.
And it's good by like 1992 standards of good. So.
Yeah. Well, that's. I mean.
Yep.
It's also the sad thing of. I feel like you could make this put Hudson Hawk in a collection of 80s stars trying to branch out during the 90s to try to keep their careers alive. You could put this with Mel Gibson and Hamlet and a few other different movies of just going, wait, this is an action star from the 80s doing this? Really? Why?
And I don't know. I bet you could put Arnold Schwarzenegger in a movie about like a magic movie ticket.
Magic movie ticket?
Yeah, it would have similar levels of cartoonish to this. You know, maybe drop a corpse full of gas down into a LaBrea tar pit. Yeah.
Okay.
Just throwing it out there.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
You doing okay, Mike?
Oh, it's fine.
He's just, he did just come back from California, so he's, he might still
yesterday.
Be like, I don't know. Yeah, yesterday.
No, Wednesday. Sorry, 2 days ago.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we have anything left to say about this movie other than I think that if you are curious, there are definitely worse movies. You could be like, oh, this movie's got a bad reputation. Why not?
I mean, you could go watch Caddyshack too.
You could go watch Caddyshack too, but why, for the love of God, would you do that, Kurt?
There is not a single person in this movie that you cannot name a worse movie that they're in. I will give it that, like, every single person in this movie, you could pick something else they've been in that is worse.
Much worse. Yeah. So,
I mean, I'm sure I could come up. I mean, I don't know.
He's looking through IMDb.
Yeah,
like, come on.
Yeah, you're doing that, aren't you? We're going
Wikipedia,
there, aren't
please.
we?
Wikipedia.
So, I'm just trying to
No, David Russo was in Jade.
Yeah.
So, going back to Crime Wave real quick, if you have Plex, it is free.
Have what?
It's a movie app, Plex. It's a free app. It's like one of those things where they show movies uncut, but you gotta sit through like 2-3 minutes of commercials.
Yeah, I ain't gonna do that.
Okay.
That's the main reason I bought YouTube Pro, is because I don't want commercials.
Well, you might be able to find it there too. So, all right. Well, that's Hudson Hawk. That again, I wouldn't go out actively seeking. I need to watch this movie, but the rewatch was fun. I will just say that the rewatch was fun. Speaking of fun rewatches, next week, I am going. Like, Mike just came back from vacation. I am going on vacation next week. We may or may not have one next week. We might have to push it just because of how my schedule lines up with everything I'm doing right now.
He's a very busy boy.
Huh?
You're a very busy boy.
I am a very busy boy. So our next box office failure, infamous box office failure, is going to be the 2013 Lone Ranger, which I just went back and watched today. What did you think I thought of it? You'll just have to hang out. You'll just have to join us next time and find out. How's that for a cliffhanger?
Ooh, anticipation.
So
I don't know why I made a Rocky Horror Picture Show reference.
Why not?
Tom, tell us, where can we find your show?
If you guys are looking to listen to our show, you can find Movies After Work on most podcast platforms: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Most of the ones that you would be listening to these guys on for their show. You can also follow our show on Twitter at Movies Work, where you can see me ranting and rambling about the most random things happening in the world today.
Nice. Awesome. And you are also on social media at Movies Work?
Yes.
Excellent. And you can find Mike and I at Geek Salad, also the same place you can find all of Tom's podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, all that fun stuff. We are on Twitter at Geek Salad Radio and on Facebook at Geek Salad Podcast. Tomorrow we go back to the studio finally. We're still on Skype, but that's only because we are taking it across the pond, and the lovely Miss M from Verbal Diorama is joining us to discuss the movies of 1991, just like Hudson Hawk.
Ninja rap.
I know. Can't not talk about that one, can't we? So, anyway, we want to know, what did you think about Hudson Hawk? Do you like it? What are your thoughts? Have you not seen it? Leave a polite comment below. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe, share the video with your friends. And until next time, I'm Andy.
I'm Mike.
Go forth and be nerdful. We'll talk to you later.